Hi, glad you're back because we have a great show lined up for you. I'm Irene.
And I'm Kevin. And today we'll take a look at violin makers. Plus we'll have the usual weekly rock showcase. And this week we'll feature the band Top Ranking.
Caroline will also be joining us with a segment on women filmmakers. And if you're wondering why I'm in such a good mood today, stay tuned and watch Nicolas finally meet his match in an interview he did with Roger the Clown. It's the moment I've been waiting for.
So stick around and watch for the fun on Artbeat coming up right after this.
Hi. Caroline, what interesting adventure are we going on?
Well, Irene, throughout this series we've been exploring the talents of a range of artists in Montreal, and of course we've looked at the contributions of both men and women. But as art so often reflects the moods of society, women have had a lot to say about their own particular place in Canada through the arts. One medium that has come to play an increasingly important role in this expression is film. Today there are a growing number of films being made by and for women, and we at Artbeat thought that that deserved a look at.
When I was saying that being a feminist filmmaker, I was adding a political sense to my film. I think the film I make, I want to change the world.
I think once women start to define their own criteria, start to give their own messages, start to talk about themselves rather than having other people who have different vested interests talking about them, you're going to have very different products.
Well, I'm sure if there's a love scene that maybe a woman would direct it quite differently than a man would. I always see those kinds of scenes done the same way over and over again without that much imagination. And I have the feeling that as we have more women filmmakers, there's certain types of scenes and there's certain situations that are going to be considered a bit differently.
Fortunately, there is a place where women are free to make the kinds of films they want. That place is Studio D of the National Film Board of Canada.
Film Board started Studio D as the first step in a policy of improving the status of women at the Film Board. The status of women when the studio started in 1974, the status of women generally was appalling. There were very, very few women on staff, very, very few women in creative positions, and virtually no women in any decision-making positions. It was intended that it would act as a model for the rest of the institution.
Being a Film Board employee and working in the Studio D, the women's studio at the Film Board, I got artistic control on my work, but it's a very, very rare thing. I
think there's a tremendously important role for the Film Board in Canada in producing another vision of the world. Now within that, there's also a parallel in that it is very important, I think, that the human race receive in the media the vision of women, the way that women see, the way that women relate to the world, because the human race is half women. The media we get is practically exclusively a white, male, middle-class view of the world, and that isn't the only way the world is.
Well, I think film is difficult not because of the craft itself, but because it takes a lot of money to make film, and women, as per se, don't have the money. So you have to go and ask where the money is, and that's usually organized power institution.
Certainly Studio D's funding within the Film Board, when we consider that we are speaking for and to half the population, our funding is nowhere near an appropriate level.
Women bring a particular worldview perspective to their filmmaking based on their position in society. Terry Nash, director of the award-winning film If You Love This Planet, explained her approach.
I think it was really important not just to inform people about information, but to inform them emotionally and to inform them about what could happen to their world. And to try and do that was to try and to get to the essence of the content. So that, in a sense, was really molding the form for me.
So let's start at the beginning of the nuclear age. That was founded by Einstein, of course, when he discovered E equals mc squared. Energy equals the mass of the atom by the speed of light squared. An incredibly profound revelation.
With a 20th Century Chocolate Cake, my feature film, it was considering some of the absurdities of the 20th century, things that we see on the street or read in the newspapers. It was more of a social criticism.
What do we do now?
You mean, what do we do now again, Gregory?
I want to do something with people. I want to know what they're thinking.
So I think ambition, for me and maybe for women generally, is something that's more integrated. Ambition for me is really doing what you want to do, is defining your own criteria, is having access to the materials so that you can go about and say the things that you really feel are important to say. Margaret Atwood once said that rape and war are two activities not widely engaged in by women. She said, because of that, I mean, just as examples, women by necessity, because of their different relative position, have a different perspective.
All of my film related to, well, I couldn't say related to women, but were made by me being very conscious that I was a woman, and were made with the idea that women would see those films as well, and doing a kind of a wink at them.
As part of the audience myself, I find something really different about seeing issues that I am interested in on the screen, seeing an approach that I understand that speaks to the realities of my life.
The National Film Board Studio D has just been one of the places where Canadian women have been able to prove themselves as film producers and directors. Today, the emphasis is on helping women to break through into the still male-dominated areas of management and technical work. And with that push, it's more than feasible that all of these films will be made exclusively through the minds and hands of women.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more after this.
Hi, and welcome back. With me is Irene, and you found out all about violin making.
I certainly did. You know, one of the oldest art forms would probably be that of instrument making. Since the dawn of time, man's leisure and cultural activities have centered around music. So, of course, before creating that music, man had to make the instrument. In today's world, we have a wide variety of instruments, from woodwinds to brass and strings to percussion. And many of us take their beauty and craftsmanship for granted. Montreal instrument makers, though, are highly skilled and devoted artists who work with precision to create. Now, the violin has been dubbed the perfect instrument, and of course, Mr. Stradivarius can take credit for that. We're going to take a look at how they're made right now. The art of making stringed instruments requires wood. One of these trees might be used to make a violin. The kinds of wood most commonly used for this are spruce and maple, rosewood, mahogany, and ebony. Many kinds of instruments have been developed throughout man's history by various cultures to suit their own tastes. The violin was perfected in the 17th century by Anton Stradivarius. The lute, once popular in Europe, is the forerunner of the Spanish guitar. The raw wood for an instrument is cut in a specific way and aged for several years before it is worked. These are some of the hand tools used by violin builders. Some are traditional, and some are designed by the individual artist. First, the craftsman makes the sides. The pieces of wood are milled and sanded until they are thin and flexible. Then, he steams them on a hot iron and clamps them onto a mold of the desired shape.
Ah, we have it here.
The shape is then drawn on the wood, which will be sculpted to make a top plate. During the last stage of the sculpting, the thickness of the spruce top plate is measured. It is thinned down to 1/8 of an inch. A support is placed and carved on the inside of the top plate. This helps to strengthen the spruce and add to the tone quality. A sound post will be added under the bridge beneath the treble string.
Sur les côtés hauts, nous avons un autre morceau de bois qui s'appelle l'âme du violon.
The sides are attached to the carved back plate with organic glue. The thickness or temper of the wood is crucial to the tone of the instrument. The overall shape is similar to that of the guitar. Quality violins have what is called inlaid trimming. A groove is cut with a special tool. Long toothpick-like sticks of ebony are made. The ebony is placed into the groove, secured, and sanded. This helps prevent the wood from cracking when under the pressure of the strings and adds a fine decorative touch.
C'est incrusté dedans. Maintenant, c'est un travail quand même, il faut que ça soit très précis. Oui. Vous voyez? Et avec des serres, je les serre.
When the pieces are ready, the violin is glued together with specialized clamps that are lined with cork so as not to scratch the wood.
À ce moment-là, c'est terminé. Oui, normalement, on peut faire ça assis à la main. Comme ça,
the violin neck is made out of a single piece of hard maple. One surface is planed level. On that, the fretboard will be attached. Next, the profile dimension of the neck is cut with the use of a large electric tool called a bandsaw. With rasps and a violin knife, the neck is carved into shape.
Ça s'appelle la coquille, ça? La coquille, oui. C'est très joli. Alors, si on sépare le manche en complet, ça c'est une coquille ou volute. Hein? Ça, ici, c'est le chevilier, où on va mettre les chevilles. Et ça, c'est le manche.
Est-ce que la coquille est toujours pareille dans tous les violoncelles? C'est toujours la même forme?
Oui.
Ici, c'est un petit peu plus terminé. On peut voir... Because the tone gets better as the wood dries and the instrument is broken in, many players prefer old instruments. Much of the luthier's work is repairing antiques. This man is working on a 250-year-old bass. Cleats are placed across the cracks and carved. A new bass bar has been put in to keep the spruce top from collapsing. The edges have been realigned to make good contact when reattached to the sides. Whether an instrument is old or newly made, it is assembled and then sanded with progressively finer grades of sandpaper. Then the varnish is applied. Selected resins are dissolved in oil to make violin varnish. A few coats are applied. Then the ebony, bridge, and strings are added. Finally, the sound post is placed. The luthier tests with a critical ear, listening for the depth and resonance of the instrument. When completed, an instrument is more than a tool for making music. It is a work of art. Each completed work has its own characteristic sound, size, and look. Each is a monument to the skill of the instrument maker. A finished product is a poem of tone, line, balance, playability, and fine adjustment. The sound peculiar to the violin is known and appreciated throughout the world. As you can see, violin makers still do exist. Gilles Saint-Michel was an extremely patient man who took his time to explain everything in detail, and he didn't even reprimand me if I had a tendency to sort of move ahead of him as he explained the process.
Well, why were you so anxious?
Well, it was so interesting. There were so many interesting pieces, and I was intrigued, so I kept sort of grabbing at things before he got to them, and he had a bit of trouble keeping me under control.
Yeah, I think what the man needed was a leash, really.
Thanks, Kevin.
No problem. Well, thanks very much for the report.
Okay.
And stick around now, because coming up we have the Rock Showcase. Anytime now. Hi, and welcome to the Rock Showcase. Today's featured band is a band called Top Ranking. Now, they're a really interesting group. You see, every time you think you have their musical genre nailed down, they switch, and you get mixed up. I thought at first maybe a little bit punkish, maybe a bit islandish, maybe a bit British rock. Well, you decide for yourself, because here they are, Top Ranking.
You on the line. It's not what she wears, ça c'était ta main.
Our influences basically are like old ska and new ska, and reggae, rocksteady. Some of them are fast and some of them are slow. You know, it's basically a history of music done in a modern style.
Well, there's been like lately, like I don't know, like underground, like a lot of bands that's been like all kinds of music, hardcore stuff like that, and like that kind of stuff is dying, and some of the old music comes back. People want to have fun.
Well, did you decide on what style of music they are? If you didn't, don't feel bad. If you did, please write and tell me. Well, once again, our rock showcase has met its demise, but do not fret, because we'll be back again. But for now, this is Kevin saying stay tuned for more Artbeat coming up right after this.
Hi, welcome back. With me now in the studio is Nicolas, who may look very calm and confident at this point, but do not despair. In the following segment, we'll see Nicolas open mouth and insert foot, and we'll all have the last laugh. Go for it, Nicolas.
I guess I'll start this out by saying, do you ever remember back to the 9th grade? That one boy in your homeroom class who acted as comic relief during the very boring periods? Well, the teacher called him the class clown, which usually meant that he was a troublemaker. Well, we troublemakers have finally grown up. Some of us are engineers, some of us are even doctors, and still some of us are in radio and television. But how many of us are still clowns? Well, in Montreal, there is at least one, and his name is Roger Clown, with an exclamation point at the end. Trying to find the fine line between Roger the citizen and Roger the clown is almost an impossibility, as I found out while taking in a high dose of some of his clown therapy.
No job too big or small, I do them all. And that's because I've done shows for neighborhood kids in my neighborhood for absolutely no money whatsoever. I played in hospitals, I played in mine shafts for miners, 1.5 miles underground on their lunch breaks. I've played for royalty 3 times, twice the Queen of England, once Queen Juliana when she was still a queen. I played for all sorts of prime ministers, and the reason it's no job too big or small is because everybody needs a clown, everybody has a clown within them, and I'm sure that when I get in there, they sort of see me as a natural, absolutely compatible type of entertainment and divertisement from what's going on in their normal lives. That's for sure.
Roger, why don't you tell us why you changed your name to Clown with an exclamation point on the end?
Roger Clown with an exclamation mark? Good story. Well, first of all, I came out as Roger Griffiths is my family name.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
And that's unpronounceable in English, let alone now here I am in the francophone part of the country. And I was Citizen Clown in Ottawa and Roger Griffiths. I had the two people together, and sooner or later I wanted to amalgamate them because I thought that you can't really separate me from what I'm doing. So I wanted to latch onto a name that said who I was, and it had to be bilingual, and in fact it works out that it's trilingual, Roger Clown, with an exclamation just adds the fact that there's something a little extra, as opposed to, you know, Fred War or John Plumber.
Beef jerky.
Beef jerky. Good line, I like that. Yeah. Let's not talk about land animals, please. I have my fish here.
Okay. No.
Anyway, I had to change it and talk about two parts of my life. The Roger part of my life, who I was born and grew up as, and the clown part of my life, which is to tell people that that's also what I do. What is a clown and who are clowns? We're all clowns, let's face it. We all have little quirks that make us a clown. You are Nicholas Clown, I am Roger Clown. You have something, for instance, this shirt. You decided that you wanted to feel comfortable in this shirt in an interview.
I was sort of forced to wear this shirt in an interview.
So that's another quirk.
Yep.
You're easily forced into wearing ugly shirts. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Now, Roger, apart from being on the job, you also do conduct workshops, as I was forced to attend.
You like the workshop?
Oh, it was interesting.
Those workshops are more important to me, really, than making money as a clown.
Right.
Those workshops are basically to allow people to know, through one means or another, that they can have a clown in them, that you out there are Fred Clown and George Clown and Georgette Clown, that everybody has a clown in them. And in the workshops, of course, I dip into Tai Chi, I dip into army calisthenics exercises, I dip into Greek chorus technique, I dip into transpersonal type psychological things, and I dip into fun and games in order to allow people, even though they may not at the end of a two-week workshop or a 2-hour workshop, understand that they've gotten something off their chest in terms of connecting the clown within to the clown without, that sooner or later they might look back on a very neutral moment. They could be doing the dishes 2 years from now and go, I know exactly how that clicks in. I know where my clown is. I know how I can get towards my clown. And that's why the workshops are very important, and I'll do most of them for free. Okay, now, don't do that while we're doing this, okay?
We're doing this today. I thought it wasn't going to start till
Now, this is the white. This is the little sponge that we're going to put on. Now, you're going to put makeup on this person. Now, not too much at first, just draw lines on, and then take your fingers and sort of spread it around like fingerprinting, okay? Okay. Wait. To be a clown, you have to try and hide some of your face, right? So that a different face, you can draw a different face on. Yes, Kona?
I'm going to put something on your nose, red.
Yeah, I'm going to put something. I'm not sure if it's red or blue. I have this blue nose. I might put that on. See? I might put that on. I might. Okay, who's winning in this little race here?
It's Roger. Is those real makeup? Not for big
Of course it's real makeup.
Not for big people.
Roger.
Oh, big clowns. Big clowns.
Are you going to be a talking clown or a silent clown?
Well, I'm talking now, but when I finish putting on my whole face, I'm going to be a silent clown. I'll only make noises. I won't speak. Some people have clowns come to their birthdays. Some people are clowns for their birthdays.
Are you going to be a happy clown?
I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm a bit sad.
Now, Roger Clown Incorporated, or Enregistré, is based in Montreal.
Yes.
How
I'll
come
give you my phone number if you want. 932-8952. I'm in the phone book under clown, white pages.
Briefly, how come you stayed in Montreal?
I love Montreal. It's a place for clowns. There's a certain, not negative tension or struggle, but there's a certain misunderstanding between English and French culturally that provides enough tension that gets my creative juices started. And besides Vancouver, Quebec is the only place where there are clowns, and I need a large city. In Montreal, I love Montreal. I'm going to stay here forever.
Thanks a lot, Roger.
Thank you.
Roger Clown with an exclamation point at the end. Jester for hire, practitioner of what is probably the world's second oldest profession. Irene.
And a profession which you could probably become a member of, Nicholas. After all, we saw in the segment that you have the shirt for it, and I've noticed during the last few weeks that, yes, you definitely have the socks for it.
Well, Irene, I noticed that your hairdos over the past 13 weeks have certainly fit the bill for Bobbino or
Well, all we need now, Nicholas, is the nose, and I'll be glad to oblige.
Well, Irene, I want to ask you, what do you think are the essential elements of first becoming a clown?
Well, I don't know, Nicholas.
Irene, do you like wearing tight jackets, you know, the type that go around here? Can we have the boys in the white coats?
That's our show for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
I certainly have.
I've been wanting to do that for weeks. In any case, we'll be back next week with a brand new lineup and some more co-hosts and some interesting stories. So be sure you join us then for more Artbeat. Until then, for everybody here, I'm Irene. Have a good day.